Right. Hello again, everybody. So today we're going to be talking about Descartes. So Rene Descartes is a French philosopher from the 17th century. You've read about him in the course reading, Sophie's World. And today we're going to be talking about one of his major works, the Meditation on First Philosophy. So we're going to be talking about what the goals of this text are, as well as chat briefly about what radical skepticism is. So we're going to try and outline the goals and engage in and talk about the view that Descartes is trying to show is false. So Descartes is after two things in this text. He's after a lot of things, but broadly speaking, he's after two things. First is to give a demonstration that God exists. And so he is going to be showing from the perspective of like a skeptical person, right? That God can exist, right? And then he's going to show that because God exists, we have good reason to think that the view called radical skepticism, which we'll talk about in a second, is false. So the idea here is that um, given that God exists, we can be certain that uh, uh, our sensory information that we gain by way of our sense capacities, right? So sight, smell, taste, touch, we can believe that we are not being deceived. Okay, so so his goal is to, in virtue of doing these two things, Descartes is going to show that there is a philosophical basis for the rest of the sciences. Okay, so the idea here is that, look, radical skepticism undermines the sciences. So what we need is a philosophical argument to show that we can do science and the things that we claim in science are true, right? Okay, so first, radical skepticism. So, um, okay, so a lot of the time, our senses deceive us, right? So sometimes when like we look at something, right? So for example, if you ever had a glass of water and you put a pin in a glass of water, sometimes the pin will look kind of bent, right? And then you pull the pin out of the water, right? And then it's not bent, right? So this is what Descartes shows as an optical illusion. So in cases of optical illusions, our sensory capacities seem to support false beliefs, right? So if I see the pin in the water and the pin looks bent, I come to the conclusion that the pin is actually bent, right? And that's false. So upon further examination, I see that the pin is not bent. So there are cases where our senses are deceptive, right? Okay, so think also about dreams, right? So, I mean, you've probably had some really crazy dreams. I know I have. But a lot of the times, dreams can be so real, right? And we exhibit a kind of agency in our dreams, right? And so, given that we are, given that our dreams are so vivid, how do we know like we're not dreaming right now? So how do you know that you're not dreaming as you're watching this video, right? But if I'm in your dreams, then it's crazy. Okay, but the idea here is that Descartes is trying to show that, look, how do you know that you're not asleep right now and this is actually just a dream, right? And you just dreamed that you woke up, and you just dreamed that you ate breakfast, and you just dreamed that you're doing all the things in your day, right? Okay, lastly, he gives this case about an evil demon. So suppose that an evil demon is the source of all of our perceptual experiences. So, for instance, when I look at this coffee cup, right? I visualize the coffee cup. I can touch the coffee cup. I can taste the coffee cup, right? And so that all of those sensory experiences lead me to the belief that there's an actual coffee cup here, right? But what could be happening is that I'm actually not experiencing a coffee cup. Rather, I'm a brain in a vat, or I'm being deceived by an evil demon, right? Perhaps I am just a brain and it's sitting somewhere, right? And there's an evil scientist that's just like sending my brain all of these sensory experiences. So, like when I look at my body, maybe I actually don't have a body, right? Maybe I'm being deceived either by an evil scientist or an evil demon, right? And so similarly, we might we we might think that uh, all of our sensory experiences are produced by some sort of deception. Okay, so this is what motivates Descartes to argue against radical skepticism, right? So the kinds of skepticism against sensory objects that I've been describing here, like in the evil demon or evil scientist case, are things like are intended to show that our sensory experiences aren't good evidence for belief, right? Okay, so um, so the question is, how do we know that we're not really dreaming, right? How do we know that we're not being deceived by an evil scientist or an evil demon, right? How do we know that what we perceive is true, right? And so Descartes' goal is going to be to try and show that no, we do know that what we perceive is true, right? That there is an actual coffee mug here, that I have a body, right? That I'm not being deceived by an evil demon. Okay, so if we are deceived by an evil demon, if we are deceived by an evil scientist, then we have reason to doubt all of the sciences, right? So, given that science is based on observation and sensory experiences and coming to conclusions on the basis of sensory experiences, it follows that we have reason to doubt all science. And so Descartes here is trying to give a philosophical argument against radical skepticism in order to preserve the sciences against what Descartes takes as a powerful objection. Okay, so we have talked about radical skepticism, and we've talked about Descartes' kind of overall goals in the meditations, right? So he's going to try and demonstrate that God exists. And given that God exists, it follows that radical skepticism is false. Okay.